Hi guys, Lindsay here with Storybook Family Farm. Today I want to show you guys how I break down a chicken. Our family does not actually like to eat bone-in chicken very often, so I figured out ways to utilize it to get the most meat out of the chicken possible, but also to make it ways that are more palatable for our family to use it. So this works for doing chickens that you buy in the store or any other sort of poultry to do this same exact method with. We actually skin out our chickens because we don't like chicken skin. So it does look a little bit different than if you were to get one from the store. This chicken is also pretty small because it is a Bantam, because that is what we raise. It's much cheaper to raise smaller birds than it is to raise full-size birds, and the grow out time is pretty much the same, but they eat a lot less food. So what you're going to do is you're going to start with a very sharp knife. I like to find the breastbone over in here. It's basically just the collarbone, or the wishbone if you want to call it that. And I actually come and I cut along it until I get to the sternum. And when you're doing stuff like butchering animals, you might think that you need to really push hard on the knife or do anything like that, but honestly I do it the same way I fillet a fish, and I barely hold on to it and just sort of gently drag the knife across. That'll give you the opportunity to really feel where the bones are without making your knife become dull. So then you can just sort of very slowly and gently scrape the knife down and pretty much carve the meat off. So this is going to be a nice little chicken breast tenderloin, basically, is what it would be size-wise, comparable to what you would see at the store. So that is pretty much how that looks right there. Is just, I just took all the meat right off. So what I'll do is I'll actually stick those into a bowl, so then that way I can, once I'm all done, I can bag it all up and put it in the freezer. So I just come down and go around towards the wing, and then I come back towards the breast here in very gentle motions, and then when you feel hitting the ribs, then you just sort of cock the knife back over. So it's just a very slow, gentle process. So I've only done probably 15, maybe 20 birds this way. So this is, we had just recently started doing it this way this past year. Before, we just would leave it as a whole chicken, and we'd very seldomly eat it, or we would end up leaving it as a whole chicken, throwing it in a stock pot, and then deboning it for, canning and things of that nature, to use it for soups and whatnot. But we found that we didn't really utilize the meat very often because it was something different than what we grew up eating, different than how we were used to doing it. But when you get a whole chicken, it's much cheaper to debone it yourself and cut it apart yourself, and then there's literally no waste, because how you get the legs off then is you sort of just disjoint it right there. You'll feel that it suddenly becomes very floppy because you've just dislocated the joint. But the nice thing is, with doing it like this, you're able to utilize the meat in ways that your family is used to using it. Like, we like to use the legs, the whole thigh and leg quarter, whatever you want to call it. We like to utilize that to actually do grilling in the summertime, to just basically make like barbecue chicken thighs, things of that nature, marinate the chicken, and then if we want dark meat chicken for something else, we can, debone it if we want it deboned. But we primarily will just bake it like that or grill it like that. So then you have another nice thigh here. So, and each one of them thighs, despite being pretty small, that is actually enough for an adult person's meat consumption for a meal, as long as you have, vegetables and other side dishes. So out of this one chicken, you could get 2 meals for 2 adults, one meal with the breasts per each adult, and then 1 meal per each leg for adults. And then the carcass here, what we do with the carcass once it's all done is I actually throw it into a stock pot that I then will add in different seasonings, make a nice broth with it, cook it very slowly over the course of actually several hours to create a really nice bone broth for the chicken meat to then be utilized in with canning. So it makes it really nice to be able to virtually pick the bones clean, have a whole bunch of extra meat. Usually each of these carcasses will produce almost a whole pint of meat to be canned up. And then once we're done picking off the carcass, we can the meat with the broth, and then we will take the rest of the carcass, which is basically just bone with a little teeny tiny bit of shreds of meat that we couldn't get off, and then we actually feed that back to the chickens. So there's virtually no waste whatsoever. The entire carcass of the chicken also does get buried, so that way it's composted in the ground. in different areas that we want the soil to be permanently made better at. So that's one way to get the most bang out of your buck, out of your birds, and also an easy way to process it, so that way you end up with cuts that you're more used to if you typically bought your meat from the store. So anyways, thanks for watching. Have a good one, guys.